Because what would happen, they would start to resist, you know. And of course, now we had a lot more tanks still available to us and artillery available to us, and we had like, they even had some of those real big guns, like instead of just a 75 millimeter or whatever, they had 155 millimeter guns, you know. And the minute we would get slightly bogged down, you know, they would call back and you know, and they'd blast whatever was holding us up, or they'd call up tanks, you know, and then they would retreat to the next village, and that's the way. Then we kept going like that. We were gaining ground, but in bigger chunks, like you know, and it wasn't confined. Sometimes we'd go around the town, you know, and when they saw they were getting surrounded, they would retreat and leave a small group to hold us back as long as they could. Then they'd take off, and we kept going that way. But I think it was different now.
When you're coming into these towns now, though, as you're moving along, are you actually having house-to-house fighting?
Most of the times, no. Most of the times, they would pull out. They would pull out.
All right.
And then so that they were trying to conserve what they had, I think, at that time. And I think the generals or whatever knew they were losing.
Yeah.
And rather than just lose all the manpower and make a big stand there, they just, you know, try to save what they could and would retreat.
Is it easier at that point than
I think
it was
it's easier in a sense that once you took the town, then you had sort of a break. In a sense, it was easier that way. But they were pretty well fortified with machine guns and whatnot. But the minute, not the minute, but as you, we had more tools to call on. Before in the hedgerows, it was strictly infantrymen against pretty much infantrymen. Because even the artillery was not too great because they could hide behind those hedgerows. They were hard to get to, you know. But now they called for artillery, a tank, and we could go along and we made better time.
The end of the war in Europe, where were you? Do you remember?
We were, I don't remember the town, but we were right there at the Elbe River.
The Elbe River.
Yeah. And somebody asked me, did you celebrate? I said, well, no, I says, no, we didn't celebrate. What the hell are we going to celebrate with? We're in the combat zone. There's no there's no bars there. There's no liquor. There's no anything there. So maybe we did probably say something. Boy, it's great. I'm glad. And when the war was over, we were relieved the fact that we didn't have to fight anymore. But then they did, after a little bit, they pulled us out and we brought us back to Bremen, to what they called the Bremen Enclave. And we relieved the British. As I remember, they were the Gordon Highlanders, and they had a big parade with all the brass, and we had to have a parade and that. And I remember I was impressed because the Scotchmen had their kilts. I don't know where the hell they got the kilts in the middle of a war, but they had them. And so they had a bunch of them in kilts, and they had a dress parade, and we sort of relieved them, and then they took off and went someplace else, some other area.
And that's in Bremen.
And that's in Bremen. And we had that 29th Division, they called it an enclave. It was an area maybe 20 or 30 miles by 20 or 30 miles, something like that. And we would control that area. And the German people were there, but they were, not where we stayed was Bremerhaven, and Bremen was a big city, but we weren't there. We were like in the farm country, our company. And we had a platoon in each farmhouse, like each had a house, and the farmers around, they were farming, they were doing their thing. You know, we didn't interfere with them. They were peaceful. They weren't, you know, they weren't no trouble at all. They just did their farming thing. And then, of course, things were easier. Oh, we were worried that we might have to go to Japan, but they gave us materials. I think we built a clubhouse, and then they started to have baseball games and things like that, competition in the division, and life became easier.
Things became easier. I'm going to wrap up this segment here. We'll come back and finish
All right.
for part